There's a lot of people that don't realize that there's so much trauma in addiction and in addiction recovery and how interlinked they are. I mean, myself included, I wanted to work with trauma victims and I didn't realize that addiction was so closely related to that. Like there's like literal studies that say the opposite of addiction is connection with others. And yeah, there's a clinical style called acceptance and commitment therapy. And that's a lot of that. It's like accept that like you're sober and this is your reality and that you're going to have a life longer than just age 30. And so what does that look like and how can you commit to making it exciting and wonderful? I'm all about like finding meaning in the chaos and like something good is going to be around the corner. My own experience is when there's chaos, there's great change that's beautiful coming around the corner. And I help people find their outlets. Like, how do you process? Like, I'm a talker. My husband's a writer. And so we have our different ways. I work with a lot of musicians and a lot of artists as well. And that's how they process their stuff.
Welcome to the Collaborative Resource Hub by Wellness Provisions. Our mission is to bridge the gap between mental health, wellness, and music, specifically rock and roll. I'm Amy McBride, owner of Wellness Provisions, the most badass wellness business. Wellness Provisions supplies rock and rollers with high-quality supplements. We give you a trustworthy place to go where you can essentially shop blindfolded. Our wellness kits were created out of a need to simplify your shopping experience and make it stress-free. You'll get the most effective nutrients in the least amount of bottles with the least trial and error. Immerse yourself in the Collaborative Resource Hub by going to our website where you'll have access to helpful resources that can nudge you in the right direction. Let's inspire each other. If that guy did it, so can you. Find the Collaborative Resource Hub interviews on YouTube, all major podcast platforms, and subscribe to our newsletter to stay in the loop. Last but not least, my legal disclaimer: nothing in this interview or the Collaborative Resource Hub substitutes medical advice. Please connect with your GP if you need medical guidance. Rachel, thank you so much for making time to chat today. How are you?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I'm doing pretty good today. A little tired, but we're good.
Yeah. Okay, so you are a licensed professional counselor, a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and you have your own practice, Atomic Souls Counseling, in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
Okay, it's a lot.
It is a lot. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like I overwhelm people with all the information. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, want the short or the long version?
Yeah. So like, what took you on your path of doing what you do and helping others in this way?
I grew up in a pretty strict, sheltered household, and so it caused some anxiety and depression in myself. And I think that generation and time, like we didn't really look at mental health as much as we do now. And so I was just kind of like floating around, like depressed and anxious, and going through life as a teenager, and not knowing like having direction. And then I was told by some people that my spirituality was not true because I had depression. They said that I couldn't be a Christian because I was depressed. Yeah, it was fucking nuts. And so I was like, okay, well, here's all the Bible verses about depression and anxiety. It's literally throughout the entire Bible. And so I just used that foundation of my spirituality to show them that they were wrong. And I was like, wow, this is, and it's not just that one person, it was like a lot of people in my life that believe that. And so I was like, well, this is unfortunate. So I went and changed my major the next day to psychology. I was like, not really an impulsive person, but I was like, this is just something I have to do because I just think it's just so, it was, I mean, I was already struggling, and then you're going to challenge my deepest held beliefs. It was very damaging. And so that person, although that was an unfortunate thing to say, it drove me to change directions with my life. I kind of was just kind of floating in life. And so although it was like a really like hurtful thing to happen, it really like motivated me to change my life, and it really helped me in the long run. And like that brought me here. And so that was like the beginning. And then I saw Christine Kane. She is the founder of anti-human trafficking organization A21.
Okay.
I saw her speak, and it was just so powerful about like her own story with like mental health, trauma, And then she spoke about what she does, and it was just, I was like, that is what I want to do. Like, that's the end goal. And so then the next step was I wasn't going to do addiction counseling. I was like, no, like that's too much. That's a dumpster fire. I don't want to judge with a 10-foot pole. But then my first job was at a detox center. So I realized quickly, like, don't tell your higher power that you don't want to do something because you'll be forced to do
You're
it.
like, no, it's
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, you need this, which is great because I mean, there's so many people in human trafficking that are addicted. Like that's part of that experience is that they get you hooked on drugs so that you don't leave them. And so I'm really grateful that I've gone this route, and it's all building on itself. And getting trained in EMDR this year through the Austin Police Department. They train therapists for free, and all you have to do is see people 50 sessions in the next 3 years pro bono, which it doesn't even out money wise, but I was like, the experience is just, I was like, I just have to do that. And it's most people who've been like survivors of trauma or have been human trafficked. And so I was like, that's the next step. Like, it's so clear. And so things are building on itself. And so that's where I'm at right now. And the end goal is to have like a human trafficking center, which sounds fucking insane. Like, I don't want to run a treatment center, but that's kind of the direction that I'm going, that end goal, however that looks. But there's no money in that. So I have to build up some kind of like financial network to have fundraising. So it's all everything's adding up to like the bigger picture.
And I mean, it sounds like you are so clearly on like the right path for yourself that you're going to end up meeting and connecting with the right people who will be like big players and like helping you reach your goal. Like it's just it's just going to fall into place.
It's wild when you like sit back and start to just like observe and don't say no to things, like, right, like don't say like don't want to do addiction, like just say yes to whatever comes your way and like sit back. Like, even in the chaos, I've been telling my team this a lot because there's been a lot of just, we're growing and growing pains. So I'm like, just sit back, like something good's around the corner. Like I can just feel it. Like the last year has just been like pure like chaos, but also like pure joy, because even when something bad happens, it just like pivot and we just like something better is right around the corner. And so that's kind of the mentality I've used. And I've met so many people already. Like, we found our space because I messaged a guy on Instagram, and we have this location in downtown Austin that's with a nonprofit that helps recovery ATX. And then we're also in the building with the sober bar, Sands Bar, and he's the guy I messaged. And we got the space, and it's perfect. It's a great fit. It's downtown Austin. We got a great deal. So it's wild what, like, you just put yourself out there and just like the next big thing, just keep putting in the effort and it'll work out.
That's so awesome. Oh, I
Yeah.
seriously like I love that for you. That's cool. And even like, I mean, like challenging experiences, like the denial of your early years, of the other people denying depression and Christian, like that's
Yeah.
so weird to me. But like you said, challenging experiences, if you lean into it, I mean, you can get so much growth from it.
Yeah, it's there was a quote recently, should have looked it up. But it was like, dead things aren't growing. And so I was like, oh shit, like that means like I'm going through all this growth and all this change. Like that means I'm like living my life and I'm like doing it in the right way. I'm like spiritually connected. And so it's a good reminder, because when I get like stagnant, it's a good reminder to say like, okay, like what do I need to change? What do I need to work on? Maybe it's a time of rest, but I think that it was just really comforting to hear that. It was like living things are growing and dead things aren't,
It's one of those just good reminders.
Mm-hmm.
So I had asked you, what are the top 3 things within your area of expertise that you feel like can help the most amount of people? And you had said trauma awareness, healthy boundaries and communication, and decreasing negative cycles and increasing positive cycles. So I figure we can kind of dig into each of these and you can sort of explain them. So trauma awareness, go.
So trauma awareness, there's a lot of people that don't realize that there's so much trauma in addiction. and in addiction recovery and how interlinked they are. I mean, myself included, I wanted to work with trauma victims, and I didn't realize that addiction was so closely related to that, because addiction is a coping skill in a sense. It's an unhealthy one that typically leads you down even more traumatic paths, but it works. It gets the feelings to go away. And so it's temporary though. It's not a long-term coping skill. And so it's a thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is the importance of trauma care within the addiction recovery treatment. And I think there's a lot of trauma seems very like clinical, and it's like, oh, like, what does that mean? I have trauma. Like, no, I don't, because it's not as bad as their trauma. It's wild. And so that book I was telling you about, The Body Keeps Score, that one really explains the like science behind it all. And then there's also a great simple like 3-minute YouTube video. This monk, Don Depani, talks about trauma and almost summarizes the entire book. It's great. And he talks about how trauma is just really intense emotions stuck in our nervous system, right? Energy in motion stays in motion. And so this energy that's been transferred to us from these intense emotional situations is stuck in our nervous system. And so it is just cycling there until we can get it out by like either talking, writing music, exercising with thinking about it. So you have to be like thinking about it actively to get from unconscious part of your brain into the conscious part and get the energy out. But it's like transferring that energy that's stuck inside of you into the world around you in a more like healthier, productive way. You can do it in unproductive ways, like there's fighting or something, right? Like that's like trauma coming out sideways, but it's more long term and it's more lasting to get it out in healthy ways, such as like talking, writing, dancing, all those kind of things. Music is a big one that helps. A lot of people write music, will dance and kind of do like trauma informed dancing, or yoga is a really big one right now. So just anything that like connects, like moving your body to get that energy out. It sounds kind of odd, but it's really powerful. And in that video, the monk, Don Depani, he says, have you had like a kid who's drawn you a picture and it's a kid's drawing, like you're not gonna like sell it for any money. He says most people haven't experienced this, but you keep it because there's love in the picture, right? You can like feel the kids' energy that they put into that picture for you. Or if they like draw you and them, like it's cute, like it's like loving. And so he said the same thing, and that's what The Body Keeps Score talks about. Like the same thing is like getting that energy out of you. And so if you can do it with like love and kindness and all of that, like if kids can do it, then like it's definitely adults can tap into that as well.
Yeah. Is there, and I guess I mean, imagine it just varies by the person, but can people process their trauma faster than others? Like, or there, you know what I mean? Like,
So we're all individual and unique in that way of like we have different ways of processing. And so this is why like talk therapy is so popular, because talking is how adults process emotional situations. And then play therapy for kids is how they process emotional situations and get it out. But there's a lot of studies like EMDR and all these things that are coming out that it doesn't have to just be talking. It can be more like body movement. And it's really just finding what works for you. Like that's kind of the negative positive cycle that we're going to talk about is I help people find their outlets. Like, how do you process? Like, I'm a talker. My husband's a writer. And so it's like we have our different ways. I work with a lot of musicians and a lot of artists as well. And that's how they process their stuff. And so it's just really finding what works for you and really like leaning into that and really being mindful and conscious to like think of your trauma and think of what you're going through or what you've been through while you're doing these things so that it's intentional to like get the energy out.
mhm. I know like, and some people, cause I like journaling a lot. Like if I'm going through like whatever, and I'm like in the thick of it, I journal a lot. And it is, the writing can be really repetitive and redundant,
Mhm.
but I mean like, and so some people will say, well, I just keep writing the same thing, but it's like, but you're working through it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's accurate, right?
Yeah. And sometimes some things are more energy. And so it takes more energy to get it out of you. And I also talk about difference of coping skills. There's distraction coping skills and there's processing skills. And let's like use music for an example. Music can be a distraction coping skill. but it can also be a processing skill. So it's important, like talking, like I can talk and vent all day, but that doesn't always help. That's sometimes a distraction. I have to like purposely process what's going on in an intentional way. And so
Yeah.
it's making sure that you're going into the process side of your coping skills. So like you can journal all day and just be like writing nonsense, but then you can actually like process by writing what you're going through or what you've been through.
Yeah. And to have the intent to want to heal from the experience and feel better.
Right.
Yeah. So then healthy boundaries and communication.
So part of addiction treatment is community and like the importance of building up your family of origin support or your chosen family support. And so with that comes communication and boundaries. Like there's like literal studies that say like the opposite of addiction is connection with others. And so with that, it's like, okay, you've been shooting heroin in your mom's basement for 10 years. Like how do I talk to somebody? And so learning to communicate is so important. And then the next step is like, how do I set boundaries if this person is like crossing them? And so it's just such a vital step in recovery to help you keep your peace, right? You're processing all your trauma, you're processing what's going on in your life in early recovery, you're getting a job, you're getting into housing, like all these things. Change. And so you have to learn how to set boundaries and how to communicate to those around you so that you don't get overwhelmed. I see a lot of people in early recovery just they get overwhelmed because it's just so much change. And then there's also like history of like family strain or friends that you've lost or friends that are unhealthy. And so you have to figure out all these things and start looking at these relationships and saying like, okay, like how can I communicate this to them and how can I set a boundary here in a loving way and it's not too aggressive or too passive, and how do I speak assertively to those around me so that I can continue on my path and stay connected myself to those around me, but not too connected, not codependent.
Yeah. I guess, is it just working with a therapist, or how can someone kind of navigate that when they're in that overwhelmed sort of state?
Like how do they cope with like the overwhelm or
Yeah, or like, I mean, how does someone know? I feel like it's a skill, to know what to say and to know what the healthy boundaries are, and to get that really like that framework set in place. Is there like a book that kind of maps it out, or is it just working with someone who can kind of like guide you through it?
yeah. Therapy is wonderful. Getting a sponsor with the 12 steps can also be a way to work on like communications and boundaries. And then Codependency Anonymous is also a big thing, or Adult Children of Alcoholics, ACA.
Mhm.
Um, Codependency Anonymous and ACA really focus on our relationships with others. And you can do the 12 steps. And basically, what they do is they say, these people are your drug. You're getting a hit from like talking to these people or trying to control them or whatnot, or like being so obsessed with this person. Because typically it's like a family member of an addict. And so they're trying to like control the addict by like telling them what to do or like setting themselves on fire for someone who doesn't even want to be lukewarm, is what I say. And so it's like they're doing all of this and it's an obsession, similar to it's an obsession to go get high and get your drugs and stuff. And so what they do is they say like, okay, you're addicted to helping this person, you're addicted to these people. And so how do you set boundaries with yourself and with the people around you? And so those programs are really good. And I really like ACA because it's more accepting. CODA can kind of be like, it's us versus them. But ACA is like Adult Children of Alcoholics. So everyone has all the issues. Most people are in recovery themselves or have family members as well. And so that one's a little more accepting. They understand kind of both sides of things. And I would say getting into therapy, I see helped most people because therapists do, that's like one of our main things is like communication and family systems. And that's all becoming really popular. So your typical therapist is going to have a lot of experience with that. Boundaries and communication. A book that would be good for that is The Four Agreements. It talks about how to like communicate with yourself and the world around you. It's like don't take things personally. The only one I can think of right now. So.
Okay, cool. Here's an advert in less than 20 seconds. Did you know that Wellness Provisions offers one-on-one wellness sessions? Yep. So if you're seeking to get healthy and ahead in life, but feeling a little stuck, then book a session and let's get you unstuck. Now back to the interview. And then decreasing negative cycles and increasing positive ones. What does that look like?
Yeah. So as you're getting sober, you're taking a coping skill, right? That has served you and helped you survive, or these other maladaptive coping skills, like codependency, that has helped you survive in the world that you were living in. And they no longer are getting you to where you want to go, right? And so if you have like goals and dreams, these are not helping you get there. They're holding you back. So decreasing these negative cycles and these negative coping skills, like another negative cycle would be like using buddies. Like, do I need to cut off these people that I was using with and find new people that I can be friends with that are going along the same path that I am of recovery? And so replacing these negative cycles that have kept you down with positive cycles of like healthy communication, going to meetings, getting a job that's stable and legal, getting housing that's stable and supportive, cutting out family that's not supportive or friends that are not supportive, finding chosen family and friends that are supportive, really focusing on like, okay, I'm getting rid of all these things. Now what? And like replacing them with positive things. I see so many people, even like a year sober, they're like, okay, I'm sober. Now what? I'm like, whatever you want, like your life, like you're kind of at a unique point where like you can do whatever you want. If you just put in like the effort and you start to like allow yourself to dream. That's a lot of things. A lot of people I see, they think they're just going to die by like 21 or 30, and so they don't know. They're like, I have no idea, I've never dreamed to have whatever life I want. And so they're actually starting to do that now. And like, isn't this exciting? Like you got to like live a life that's like super exciting. And so just like getting in touch with that inner child, like what brought me joy as a kid, like what is exciting, like just try all the things and then see what sticks. And it's a cool experience to see someone who thought they were just going to die at 21, like living a life at like 25 that they never dreamed of.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah. Sometimes it's exciting. It's really, if they're like along for the ride and they're like willing to put in the effort, it's really cool to see all the change and growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. It's like putting in the effort, and I feel like committing to the process and knowing that things are just going to keep being awesome if you allow it.
Yeah, there's a clinical style called acceptance and commitment therapy. And that's a lot of that. It's like accept that like you're sober and this is your reality and that you're going to have a life longer than just age 30. And so what does that look like and how can you commit to making it exciting and wonderful instead of like miserable? Because you can just be a dry drunk and just be like, okay, I'm sober, cool.
Yeah.
Miserable.
Right. Yeah. Or you can like be an active like creator of a life that's worth living, that will be fulfilling.
Yeah, fulfilling too. It's like, okay, like what was exciting to you as a kid? Like what's exciting to you now? Like what gives you these positive feelings like that you were seeking with using drugs and alcohol? Like there was some drive there for you to feel good. So like there's other things in the world that will help you feel good that are more sustainable.
Yeah. Oh, that is exciting. So can we break down the stages of change model as it relates to like addiction treatment?
Yeah. So the stages of change for the clinical side of things are pre-contemplation, no intention of changing behavior. So that's going to be someone who's just in their addiction, don't even realize they have a problem. It's not been presented to them, or it has, and they're like, no, I'm fine. Like I'm functioning addict, going to work. I'm just drinking on the weekends. That's fine. But really, they're like binge drinking, and it's not fine. So that one's complete denial. The next one's contemplation, aware of the problem existing, but with no commitment to action. So they're like, okay, maybe I have a problem, but I'm not going to treatment. I'm not working on it. Still working for me. It's fine. I can drink every day and I'm still like making my money. So there's usually not too many consequences there. Or they there are consequences, and the high is just so good that it's just like not willing to take any action. The preparation stage is intent on taking action to address the problem. So it's like, okay, maybe I need treatment. Let me call this therapist and see what's going on. I'll try therapy, maybe outpatient. Maybe they're already looking into detoxes. Okay, I can't do this on my own. I've tried to get off alcohol or benzos alone, and I obviously can't do it because those are like the hardest to get off of. And so start looking around at treatment centers, maybe start Googling, like, what does it mean to be an addict? Stuff like that is like preparing yourself to make some change. And then action is like going to treatment, going to see a therapist, starting to really cut back on your alcohol if you feel like you're over drinking. And so it's really taking action. And then maintenance is sustained change. So it's continuing to take action and continuing to stay sober. And then there is relapse. Is falling back into old patterns of behavior. And this can look like you haven't picked up anything, but you're falling back into old friendships that weren't healthy. And so it's really being aware of those patterns of behavior is really important, because you can be on the track for relapse and not even realize it without some like extra support. And that's where that community aspect comes into play so importantly, because if your therapist or your friends or your 12-step sponsor, like if they can see that and like you're unaware of it, then they can be like, hey man, like this person helping you or not? Is this a maintenance friend, or is this a relapse friend? And so really you don't have to relapse. A lot of people think that you have to, but the average is like 5 to 7 relapses before like sustained maintenance. But that doesn't have to. You don't have to be tell people. So that's the clinical model. And then I wanted to also share the 12-step model. It's similar. It's split into spiritual, mental, and physical. And so it's a little more detailed. And it really starts with the spiritual side, which is restless, irritable, and discontent. And so it's like you're feeling bored, angry, lonely, depressed, guilty, ashamed, anxious, nervous, obsessions. That's where it really starts, is like that internal dialogue, the spiritual side of things. And then it goes into the mental side, where it's the great lie, where I can control it, or I enjoyed it. Like I can have one beer, like it's fine. I can smoke weed, it's fine. No, it's lying to yourself. You were just in treatment for shooting up heroin. Like it's going to lead you back to the same thing. And then it goes into the physical, like allergy, where it's you use and it sets off an allergic reaction. And you're like, I need more of this. And so you'll hear people say, like, I'm allergic to alcohol, break out in handcuffs, right? That's like the joke. But that's because that's where it leads. And so it just sets it off. I say it's similar to like someone who's diabetic, and they have to be mindful of like eating certain ways. So you have to be mindful in the same way. Addiction is like you have to go to certain meetings, you have to do certain things every day to avoid. It's different than someone's diabetes, but it's very similar. It's a daily maintenance that you have to work on. But when the allergy is kicked off, let's say you use, phenomenon of craving kicks in, where it's like you are just off to the races, and then you go into a spree, which is continuing to use over long term, and then the consequences of jail, rehab institutions, etc. And then you can either have a firm resolution to get sober, or you can continue into the restless, irritable, and discontent, continue using. And so that one's more about the relapse side of things and like where it comes from. And the other one, the clinical model, is more about like the sobriety part of things, like how do I continue this and stay sober? And I think it's good to know both, because it's good to know like the restless, irritable, discontent, like where is this going to lead me? How can I take care of it? Acknowledging that, and then going into like, okay, now that I am aware of it, I can prepare and take action to maintain and really work on these things, so I don't fall back into the restless, irritable, and discontent relapse. And so they can really be interchangeable, I think, for solid recovery. So like have both models and really look at them and see how they're intertwined.
Yeah. And it seems like regardless, just like you're saying, like having the awareness, just being mindful of what you're doing in your day. And I don't know, like maybe like, does anyone make like a little, like a cheat sheet sort of a thing to keep literally in their back pocket of like what their future intention is and the feelings that they want it, just as like that, like to look at it when they need that boost?
Yeah, I definitely encourage people to do that, or have it on their phone, like as they're like screensaver, or like post it by their bed. So when you wake up, or like your mirror, like have it written on your mirror. Because when we see things like that, it's a physical reminder and it does something different in our brain. That's why like writing or doing music or any art, like all these things are more powerful than just kind of like letting it sit in your brain, right? And so we have to do these things to make it real. Our brain like does something different when we speak something or write something or um, do something physical. And
Mhm.
so yeah, definitely like writing it and looking at it, reminding yourself is really important.
Yeah, I've heard too, like if someone wanted some positivity statement or something like that, if you write it every day, even because I guess the act of writing it rewires your brain. I don't know if it's quicker or differently, but it's a
Yeah.
better impact than just simply reading something.
Yeah, it makes it more real and like tangible, right? It's like thoughts and emotions are very like kind of out here and like what
Yeah.
are they? Like their energy really. And so writing it or like reading it's like probably a good first step. And then writing it makes it your brain is like, oh, this is a tangible thing. Like I can hold it, I can see it. And so it changes it to make it more like real than when it's like in your brain.
Okay, yeah, that's a good way. I like how you describe that. I mean, yeah, that makes sense now that it does.
Yeah.
It makes it from like a one-dimensional thing into like a three-dimensional thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you have any like book or podcast recommendations or anything that you have observed to be helpful for other people?
Yeah. I'd say that Four Agreements book that I said. There's also, I would, anyone that's like struggling with life in general or addiction, like read the big book, the 12-step big book. It's just, it's great. Like I'm not in recovery. I'm a normie, as they say. And just like reading it is really, it's just a great self-help book. And it's just really good to like look at the cycles that you're in, whether it's addiction or mental health or whatnot. It's just a great book. And it's really the only like the first couple hundred pages is like really like the meat of it. And so I would say like read that, read the Four Agreements, read The Body Keeps Score. All of these books are amazing with trauma, communication, and these like cycles, breaking the cycles and encouraging new ones.
Yeah, when I was actually, I think I was probably like 18 or 19, um, when I was doing like a lot of journaling through stuff. I used like yeah, like the AA book as like I was reading it and looking at it as like yeah, like a self-help book and like taking notes.
Yeah,
And there's some, I mean, gosh, it's been years since I've looked at that journal or dug into the book, but like I remember it being so helpful and some sentiments just like being like, wow, like it really is good.
yeah. Yeah, there's some very profound statements in there. I just love it. Another one would be What's Your Why by Simon Sinek. So it's amazing. He's just amazing. Just
Yeah.
follow everything he does.
Yeah, I know. I know. He's like, he's just a wonderful genius and has such good perspective. Yeah, I think I own that book. I bought that one.
Yeah, that is also like that. Like, what's your why? It's going to help you identify what are my goals? Like, what is the life that I want to live? And so it's really a great foundation to look into when you're taking away all these other coping skills that have not served you.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to kind of like share or communicate to anyone who could use just like practical tips on balancing stress or where to begin if they feel overwhelmed or anything?
Yeah, I would say lean into it. I'm all about like finding meaning in the chaos and like something good is going to be around the corner. We were talking about that earlier. My own experience is when there's chaos, there's great change that's beautiful coming around the corner. And so, really just learning to ground yourself in those moments. So, using like your five senses to say, like, okay, what do I hear, smell, touch, taste? And really learning to breathe, working like meditation, whatever that looks like for you. I love just mindful meditation, just being present in the moment and like the grounding of like, okay, I feel the table right here. I feel my feet on the ground, like really just getting present. And then looking at my goals. Okay, like reminding myself, like, okay, this is what I want. Is this watching TV for 10 hours, like binge watching TV? Like, is that helping me reach my goals? Like, no. So maybe I can cut it down to like half that time to make some change. And so really like grounding yourself in the present moment and then like in the future, like what are my goals to get to where I want to be, I would say help the most with like feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is, "In the middle of chaos lies opportunity."
Yes. Oh my gosh. So true.
Yeah, exactly. But it's
Yeah.
your perception if you can view difficult situations as opportunity, which
Yeah.
everybody should do.
Yes. And I find people struggle to do that if they have like trauma, because it's a trauma reaction. You're just like shut down, like fight or flight, freeze or fawn. And so, really identifying those negative cycles, like, okay, like I'm having a trauma reaction to this situation. What do I need to look at? How can I acknowledge that? What can I do to change my response now that I'm healing and I'm responsible for my healing? That's just so important to that when you're feeling like, whenever your emotions don't match the situation, really look at that as like a flag to like, okay, I need to step back and like, what am I really responding to from my past?
Yeah. Do you have a favorite quote?
Yes. Mother Teresa, she says, being unwanted, unloved, uncared for, forgotten by everybody. I think that is a much greater hunger, a much greater poverty than the person who has nothing to eat. Because that poverty pertains to everybody, like whether you're like financially stable or not, like that emotional poverty is something that goes across the board, no matter like where you come from. Like we can all experience those things. And so that quote really motivated me um, during that time that I was really struggling as a teen to really kind of have perspective. I felt validated in my struggle. And then I also felt like I wanted to help people with similar struggle.
Yeah. It's heavy. I like it. It's yeah, it's empathetic and
Yeah.
it's too good of a quote. I mean, I can't even like
There's
respond
nothing to
to
say.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it says it all.
it's a mic drop.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you so much for being here. Like, this has been awesome. I just love talking to really smart people in tune to psychology and philosophy and just like the brain and stuff. It's just, these interviews are really just like self-serving. I just think they're awesome. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're awesome. It's great to hear about your routine earlier and meet your cats. And
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it's just, it's so inspiring that there's people out there like yourself that are interested in this stuff and that are willing to like use your free time to like share this information with people out there so that they can have it. I was telling someone the other day, I'm like, "Yeah, on a podcast," and they're like, "Who is that?" And I was like, "This chick that does like really awesome stuff. Like you should check it out." And it's just, it's so cool that you're like using your time to like help others in that way. So it's
Yeah.
just really awesome. So.
Yeah, that's my drive or mission or whatever it is. I just want people to feel healthier and happier, like in their mind and body. Like if
Yeah.
there's anything I can provide to make information accessible and easier to navigate and just, be like a matchmaker for people with resources, I'm so down. That's what I want to do.
I love that. We need more of that. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah.
And your future path that you're on is like wicked cool. So mad
Thank
props.
you.
All right. Have a lovely rest of your day and we
Yeah.
will connect sometime in the future.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
I'm so tired.